Hey everyone, welcome to open class number 13.
Hey everybody.
How are you doing, Mike?
Great. Doing really well, thanks. Yourself?
Pretty good, can't complain.
Good.
Very good. So a little behind the scenes thing again. I think we have actually all our videos ready for our new membership program. And I believe that definitely by October 1st, we'll be good to go. So exciting.
That's awesome. Yep, that's good stuff. Really good stuff.
Very cool. So let us jump right into our questions. As always, nothing is medical advice, just me and Mike sharing general thoughts that we hope will be really helpful. And we have 5 questions today, 5 emails or 5 messages that we will go through. So let's just start here with this one from Faye, who has sent a couple of questions. Faye says, "Hello, Daniel. Thank you for the wonderful advice as usual last time. However, the light sleep issue is continuing. I haven't had a deep sleep in, I think, almost 2 weeks straight, and it's worrying me that I can never get that good sleep now. I'm usually out of my house at hotel rooms for 5-6 days out of the whole week. And as I noted before, I can't really sleep too well at hotel rooms. So my routine was I somewhat had poor quality sleep at hotel rooms and got good sleep at home, but now I can't seem to do that anymore. I had a Seroquel and some wine before bed last night, and now that's not working either. As I'm sleep deprived, my hypnic jerk that get this frightening feeling as I'm dozing off, and it wakes me up completely, like when you're about to hit the car in front of you, is coming back, and panic attacks are coming back a little bit. I'm very worried that I'm going to lose control and be in full insomnia panic mode if this continues any longer. The light sleep, dreaming that I was talking about seems to be imaginary state where I'm going on an adventure or something, and I know I'm not really sleeping because when I wake up, I immediately feel alert and I don't feel like I slept. I think I'm going to have some psychologists to imagine insomnia, anxiety, panic. So I have a couple of questions. Again, if you can answer it, would be great. Do you think the hotel sleeping outside home is messing with a sleep pattern? So that's number 1. Do you think this is all happening because of hyperarousal? Number 2. Do you think I can get the deep sleep I was having? Number 3. Also, I'm having a hard time not worrying about sleep. I'm functioning fine daytime, just some fatigue due to lack of sleep, but I can get by pretty well. But the fact that I keep getting super light sleep all day is starting me pretty bad at this point, since I never really had this before. If I knew what was going on, then I probably wouldn't be worrying this much. I feel much less anxious at a hotel room, as I already know I don't sleep too well there, so I don't expect much. But when I get home, that's when I have to recover from my lack of sleep. So I seem to have a very high expectations of sleeping. And when I can't sleep at home like I used to, it worries me a lot. I'm trying not to care and react to this whole thing, since I can still manage every day, but I'm starting to have some panic too. So I wanted to do something before it becomes out of control. Thank you for your help as always." So I think I think I can start here, if that's okay, Mike, because there were a lot of things I want to say here. It's it's one of those emails we could probably we could spend a whole hour on this one alone, because there's so much I think that we could talk about here. But I think I want to start like real big picture here, and say that to some degree, insomnia really always is about, like, there's so many ways to describe insomnia. You could say that it is a fear of being awake, and you try to escape that, and the worse it gets. Or you could say that it's a strong desire, like I have this desire to sleep, I want to sleep, I pursue it, I gotta have that sleep. That can create. But another way, which I think is very apt here, is the control one, where when you start having trouble sleeping, it's like this thing that was very natural, separately, I didn't do anything, is kind of slipping away from me, so like the soap. And then the more I try to grasp to it, the more slippery it becomes, and so I just can't get a hold on to it, right? It is the more you try to control something, the more slippery that thing gets. And I think this is very, very helpful to think of here, because what I read through, like the thing that goes through this email, I feel, is I'm just losing control. I'm losing the little sense of control I had before, predictability, and that's the fear of completely losing control, and trying to maintain some control is what pushes things to get worse and worse and worse. So with that kind of big picture thing said there, I want to not forget to answer these 3 questions, which is, do you think the hotel sleeping outside home is messing my sleep pattern? And no is my short answer. The longer version of that is like, there are tons of things that can disrupt your sleep, such as sleeping in a different environment. But if you're really struggling, you can't figure out what's going on, you're trying things, you're trying to wrap your head around it, that has nothing to do with sleep environment. That is thought driven. That is the fear of losing sleep, the trying to control that drives that. Do you think this is all happening because of hyperarousal? Absolutely, 100%. I think insomnia is always driven by hyperarousal. Now, what's important there is this. Hyperarousal, which is this kind of heightened emotional state, can be driven by many things. Anxiety is an obvious one. Fear is an obvious one. Anger is another one. But puzzlement is another one. Bewilderment is one. Curiosity is another one. Just having that, like, wondering, like, what the heck is going on, that is enough to cause hyperarousal that can really drive insomnia. Do you think I can get the deep sleep I was having? Absolutely. And, often people ask me, like, when will I get that? And then I'm always like, when you stop asking when, like, how can I get it? When you no longer wonder how you can get it. It's all about, like, the more attention you give sleep, the more trouble you have. Now, before I let you comment here, Michael, there were really some things I wanted to talk about. And this one. I'm very worried that I'm going to lose control and be in full insomnia panic mode if this continues any longer. So if we just stay on that kind of sentence for a bit, it is completely understandable, right? 100% understandable. Things are getting worse and worse. And if it gets any worse, I'm going to lose my mind or lose my job. Something is going to happen. So I got to do something now. But guess what? The more you think that there's this catastrophic event that's going to happen if you can't control your sleep, then the more pressure you have to control your sleep and the more trouble you have, right? So in this very sentence, we really get to the core of it. It is that you have this longing to have some sense of control, and that is what is driving the whole thing. So yeah, that was my, I hope you probably felt the passion. Yeah. Felt the passion.
Yeah, and
yeah, Mike, what do you say?
Well, that's most of what I gleaned as well. I comment about control of sleep. We're human beings. We have big brains. We want to control everything, and sleep is like the big thing that you can't control. And so I would say, Thea, I think the name, never had control of their sleep. So have that, maybe try to adopt that perspective. I never controlled this thing that I'm now trying to control. And it was easier before I even thought about controlling it. And now that I'm thinking about controlling it, it's getting more elusive all the time. So you can see how that thought process kind of, perpetuate the insomnia. It kind of keeps it going because you're turning to the efforts and, and all that. And please don't take Seroquel and wine at the same time. Thank you. But also I want to comment about your observation that, Faye's observation that they aren't getting deep sleep. But then they comment right and along the same time with having kind of dreamlike experiences. So, kind of going full like physiology nerd here, if you are dreaming, that means you already went through your deep sleep. At least, it goes off and on during the night, but anytime you're dreaming, kind of pretty well documented that you before that, for a little while before that, you were in some deeper sleep. So you may be getting more deep sleep than you realize. You add to that your observation that during the day, you do okay. You function all right. A little fatigued, I think was the phrase, a little fatigued. Okay. A million things can make you a little fatigued. I go eat a cheeseburger, I feel a little fatigued, it's kind of like, I think that's, understand that's kind of not unusual to feel a little fatigued during the day. So, all of this is meant to put Faye in a more relaxed state, kind of thinking about your sleep, how you think about your sleep. Clearly the push to control it, keeps it going. It perpetuates it. So you have to adopt a completely different approach. And that's kind of what I read kind of between the lines in that email was that that thought process that Faye may be having.
Absolutely. And just before we go on to the next one, I just for everyone tuning in here, just kind of want to double down on what you said, Michael, here, which is when you slept pretty well and then you have trouble sleeping and you're obviously thinking like, what did I do different when I slept well? then you think of like, I did this and that, and since like I had control, I had the ability, but in reality you did not. It just seems like that when you look back, and that can really get you into a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Very well, Faye. Hope this really helped, and stay in touch. Let us know how things go. And by the way, I think that was super insightful what you said about like in the past I slept well at home, and now there's all this pressure to sleep well that night I'm at home. Pressure always leads to a less good sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So great insight there. All right, this is from my namesake, Daniel. Let's read it. Hi, Daniel. I've been watching your videos for a few months now, and they've been a huge help. Very glad to hear that. My insomnia first started from health anxiety back in May. I was barely getting any sleep at night, 2 to 4 hours, if that, due to hypnic jerks, anxious thoughts, and I felt like I was going crazy and that there was no hope for me. Once I started accepting poor sleep and stopped trying so hard to get a good night's sleep, I started seeing major improvements, and I was able to sleep for 5-6 hours and even going back to bed for another hour or two easily after waking up. I thought I was on the right track until a few nights ago when I encountered poor sleep again and wasn't able to go back to sleep. I told myself it's okay because I've been through this before, so I didn't freak out or get any anxiety. But ever since then, it feels like I'm back to square one because my sleep the past 5 nights has been pretty bad, from waking up after 2 to 3 hours, not being able to go back to sleep due to hypnic jerks, even though I'm going to bed with no fear or anxiety. I'm trying to stay strong mentally and not think about it, but it's hard not to think about it when I'm really tired throughout the day. I understand that acceptance is a huge part of good sleep again, but I would just like to ask if there's any more knowledge I should know to get through this, and if it's normal for a person to encounter continuous nights of bad sleep out of nowhere after having big improvements. I think this is a super important question because it's a common one. It is a question of like, okay, I started learning, I slept better for quite a long time, and then suddenly out of the blue, here I am sleeping very little again. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it could be out of the blue. I mean, I don't think that's, I think that's sort of a common experience. But, a poor night out of the blue is pretty common for a lot of people. But then when it becomes then applying efforts, trying this, trying that, that's when it just perpetuates. So a couple words I jotted down here along the email. So one was such a common phrase, you hear it all the time, is I wasn't able to sleep. Okay, this isn't really an accurate phrase. It doesn't really make sense. It's not accurate. The word able, the core, it's ability, ability. Everyone has the ability to sleep. So to say that you were not able isn't a really good way of phrasing things. I would turn it around. I like the phrase sleep was a bit elusive. I like to say that. It's because it has nothing to do with your brain generating sleep. So sometimes just changing some phrasing can make a big difference with insomnia. You kind of use different phrases, and you can kind of almost train yourself that you are not in control. You can't control this thing called sleep. So you have to look at it in a completely different way, and that involves changing how you think about it. So that was one thing. Another was during the day, I think Daniel said something like can't not think about it, or something like that. It was just like so kind of omnipresent during the day. That one, I would suggest just getting really involved in other things so that you almost can't think about it. Don't really monitor yourself during the day, and especially don't try to equate how you feel with the previous night, because if you do, it's going to it's going to affect how you function during the day, and it's going to affect how you think about sleep, and it's going to affect probably how the next night is going to play out. So really enjoying time awake, whether it's when the sun is up or the sun is down. Enjoy the time that you're awake and do something that you really like, and allow sleep. I like that phrase as well. Allow sleep to happen. So it's sort of like, the hypnic jerks, the gas brake going at the same time. It can be kind of that quick start stop thing. You wake up briefly, and you're very alert, and then you're drifting off, then you're very, it's like, that's kind of the great analogy that Daniel came up with, of course, the gas brake. And so I think that you have to recognize that and work on the hyperarousal, really work on not focusing on anything but things that you enjoy during the day. When it comes to insomnia, it's getting out of your own way is like kind of a big part of sleeping well.
Absolutely. And by the way, Neil, I see your comment here. Let's read it quickly here before we talk about Daniel's. It's from Neil, one of our biggest fans here, biggest supporters. It's midnight here in Israel, I think. So you guys are my bedtime story tonight. Kind of funny listening to trouble sleeping in bed. Love you guys' work. By the way, I never fell asleep thinking about sleep. The last thought on my mind before I fall asleep cannot be sleep, because if it is, I won't sleep. Very true. Yep. All right.
Yep.
So thanks, Neil. And back to Daniel here. Firstly, I want to say this. What you are experiencing, Daniel, is extremely common. And it is very frustrating because you have done the right thing. You learned about sleep. You applied some habit change, some thought work, etc. You slept better. And then it's like, why did it happen again? Now I've gone 5 nights with really no sleep. And the difference between yourself, Daniel, and somebody who's never had any problem sleeping is that, like you said, Michael, for somebody who randomly doesn't sleep much one night, it's kind of like, oh, that's odd, whatever, and then they sleep well again. But if you've had trouble sleeping in the past, it is kind of like PTSD, a little bit like post-traumatic stress there, that triggers everything again. You're like, oh my gosh, this is it. It's going to start again. What can I do to stop it? I did everything again. I've already did this, etc. And that's the thing. That is the thing. In my mind, this is the thing, meaning like when you start having trouble sleeping again, you can do kind of the dismissal. You can be like, shrug it off. That was one night. I'm not going to care much about that. And kind of like what you said, Michael, like the dismissing, like I'm just going to enjoy my day. That can work really good. But when it becomes sticky, when it's like, I can't stop thinking about it for several days, and you have trouble sleeping for several days, then I think you actually have to go the other direction sometimes, meaning you go into like, okay, this is typical. A lot of people have this happening to them. And the more I try to be like, I got to stop this. This can't happen again. I can't have another round of insomnia. I got to stop this thing. Then you got to have more trouble sleeping. So when you go, I know this is super hard, but when you go and say, all right, I might have another stretch of poor nights. I might not sleep at all for a while, and that'll be okay. I've learned a lot already. All that I learned, all the education I have within me that can never be taken away from me. And if I don't try to stop this resistance and try to prevent more trouble sleeping from happening to me, sleep will come to you. I think that is super important. And I think really that's the thing. I felt there was one more thing I want to say, but now it escapes my mind. But I think that's like, resist it will persist. But
yeah. And I think just to add one last thing, I think it would be helpful to do kind of that detective work, kind of look to see if these catastrophic things that may be kind of in your mind about, well, if I have a poor night's sleep, all these terrible things, look and see if there's really evidence of that. Most people, when they think about it, they're kind of like, yeah, I got through my day. It's okay. And at night, in the middle of the night, the worry of having this catastrophic event happen during the day can be big. I think part of it is kind of how your brain changes a little bit, but it's kind of like during the day when you're thinking maybe a little more clearly than in the middle of the night when it's just you and it's dark and all. During the day, just take a moment and be like, yeah, how's your day going? It's going all right. And that's kind of evidence that you may be getting a little more sleep than you think you are, which is really common. Or you don't need as much sleep as you think you do. It could be like these kinds of things. So just do that detective work. Just kind of ask yourself, challenge yourself. Say like, well, did these terrible things happen? Did this big problem become bigger? No, it really never happened. So have a talk with yourself, I guess I'd like to say. During the day, not at night, during the day.
During the day. And I think that what I thought about came back to me. Actually, 2 quick things I want to say. 2 quick things, Daniel. One is that, when you don't have any trouble sleeping, sleep is not on the radar of your mind's like safety machinery there. It's not even there, right? Then you have trouble sleeping, it gets onto the radar. Then you have a more trouble sleeping, then it's really big. It's on the central in your radar. It's like ring, ding, 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 ding. and then you do the thought work, and then it kind of shifts out of the radar again. But it takes a while before it's completely gone. Sometimes there's kind of a little reactivation, but then if you just like, do everything we talked about, then it will again move out of the radar, and it kind of goes in waves. We've seen this many times that you start sleeping better, and then you have a wave of insomnia again. That one goes away, and then you may have another wave, and it goes away. But with time, those waves get less stronger, and there's more space between them. So hang in there, Daniel, and you will see this wave will pass, and the next one will be weaker, etc., etc. But stay in touch. Let us know how things go. Perfect. So with this, we'll move forward here. This is Thea, who has, like Faye, sent us a couple questions in the past and contributed with a lot of great comments, by the way. Thank you, Thea. Let's read this. Hi, Dan. It's Thea. I am going to be honest, writing this email is kind of painful. I'm really trying to be positive while trying to recover from my insomnia. But some days it's really hard. Days like this one. This message is basically me trying to look for reassurance and comprehension, since I get none from the people around me because they think I'm just being dramatic and looking for an excuse to be less productive. I really don't think this needs an answer via video. I'm sorry, Leah, but now that we're here, I didn't read it carefully. But for everyone out there, when you send us an email, I will just say that I'm going to reply by video. But let us read this anyway. I'm actually just complaining, but if you think a response could help someone else, please go ahead. There we go. Okay. I've had a rough 3 days with very little sleep, and even though tonight I slept a bit more, I don't know how much. I'm actually not tracking very good. I feel so exhausted. Eyes always burning, slightly red, foggy mind. My head hurts or spins a lot. I don't have the motivation to do anything, and I'm just really apathetic, which is quite unlike me. I don't know how much of this is related to lack of sleep, but I feel like I would feel good if I wasn't so tired and without the possibility to get proper rest. Even on the good days, I'm never getting as much sleep as I was able to, so I tell myself that calling them good days isn't actually accurate, and this depressed me even more. Now that I know my problem is anxiety and that I think too much about it, I don't even feel anxiety. Some nights I actually feel so relaxed I just can't fall asleep, and that's scary to me. I don't really have anything in particular to ask. I just needed to talk about this to someone who has experience in the field and won't belittle what I'm feeling. Sorry for the sad message, but I feel that when someone is suffering, it is also healthy to grieve and acknowledge the bad feelings. Hope you're all well. Thank you so much, Thea. And absolutely, I think there's a lot here that Thea is actually super, super helpful to talk about. So I want to thank you for this email. And I'll start here, Michael, by going over a few things I thought were really helpful, important here. Firstly, kind of this one. I'm trying to be positive, but sometimes it's really hard. I think that there's something very important there. And that goes to something else Thea said later on in the email about like trying to be positive. And I think this to me is something about affirmations. If you're always told like be positive, focus on the positive, which can be great, but it can also be problematic because you may not believe it. If something good is happening to you, like I always tell my clients and people on China that if you really slept good, you feel good, you feel optimistic, then why not affirm it? Tell somebody about it, write it down, think about it, like make it a big deal. Good, you give yourself like that extra tailwind. Yeah, you believe something good happened, give you an extra tailwind by affirming it. On the other hand, when you feel like things are actually not going your way, then it can hurt you more than it helps to like try to be positive because you don't believe it. And when this is kind of it feels false to you, you don't believe it, it doesn't feel good. It kind of makes you sad. So, never try to affirm something when you don't believe it. Go in the direction of kindness instead, being like, I feel sad today. That's okay. I don't need to feel happy. There's no judgment. Like just talk to yourself as you would talk to a friend, etc. Which goes to the other thing you said here, which is like, I'm just looking for kind of reassurance because nobody understands what I'm going through, which is very common. There are, a lot of times the people near you don't really understand, so they can't really give you full kind of understanding. And that's where like you kind of have to be your own person in there, like, talk to yourself as you would a friend, like be that person for yourself who gives yourself that compassion. And of course, here on the community here also, like we're always here, of course. Now, another thing that I'm trying to look for comprehension, which I think particularly if you're very bewildered and you just started having trouble sleeping, comprehension is very important. Like you have to understand why you have trouble sleeping. But at some point when you kind of like, maybe like you, Thea, actually, you understand a lot, you know it's anxiety driven, you understand a lot of what we talk about here, then going deeper into comprehension can sometimes not be the right thing to do. Maybe it's better to like go in the direction of like the what do you call it? Those existential questions, like how big is the universe? I can never find out. So sometimes it's better to be like, I can't understand everything, you know, and leaving that and not trying to understand it can be really, really helpful. And then I also that, yeah, the fatigue, the eye burning, all that stuff. Yeah, you know, I know this may not seem like super, super helpful to hear, but you know, there's no question that that when you sleep a little, you don't feel as good. That is true, but always try to look for other reasons that can contribute to your fatigue, like thinking a lot about it, or like not like limiting your social activities, or like being isolated, things like that. And because there are a lot of things that you have more control over, that you can change more easily than how you sleep. And the less you attribute how you feel daytime to your sleep, the less pressure to sleep and the more it will help. So yeah, I think that was my main thing. So hang in, Thea. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely feel the struggle there. I just want to point out to share personally, when I don't get enough sleep for any reason, I feel really awful. I mean, my eyes go bloodshot. My throat's scratchy. It's just like I'm really, it's challenging. I completely 100% get it. Um, I'm kind of a proponent. I call it, I have this weird little thing. I call it my opposite theory. So, or my opposite therapy, I guess is a better name for it. So, opposite therapy would be you feel alone and isolated during the day. Go out and talk to someone about anything, just anything. Go to the store and ask someone or tell someone, "Wow, you have a nice hat on." I don't know, or what, oh, those are the cantaloupes on sale. Maybe I should get, just talk, just get it out there, just start talking. If you, if you're tired during the day, really fatigued, and you think, I know I'm not supposed to nap too much, I'm not supposed to like sleep for like 3 hours during the day, and that's generally a good thing to not do. It's that much. Get on your feet. Just say, okay, I'm going to go for that walk right now, or I'm going to, clean this room, or something that it's like not too taxing, but you're not going to sleep. So it's sort of this opposite thing. And that actually plays out even into the night, where if you're awake at night and you just feel like tired, maybe really relaxed, but not sleepy, then enjoy the time. Like, turn the tables, just get that magazine that you sort of were interested in looking at through, or that show on TV that you wanted to watch. Enjoy the time, turn the tables. It's like opposite therapy. So, because what most people would logically think is, oh, if you're awake at night, you got to get in bed and just like try and just like really, really relax and really whatever, fill in the blank, really get, really fall asleep. I just got to, and that leads to your own talk in your head of, I need to sleep. So, that doesn't help. And during the day, if you have had maybe a poor night of sleep the night before, it's not helpful to really ingrain that in yourself that day. Try to look for simple ways to kind of go the opposite direction. And I'm not saying this is easy, but I do it. So if I have a short night of sleep once in a while, I think I've mentioned on this channel before, my windy nights, that's my bane. So I say, okay, I'm tired. I haven't had enough sleep. And I know my eyes are kind of scratchy and bloodshot, and I know I'm not feeling my best, but I go for the run. I don't put myself in a sedentary situation. I try to go through my day like it was the same night as before, like nothing unusual happened. It's just another day. So I don't know how you accomplish that exactly. I can't really articulate it, but I guess maybe the best I could say is try to live your day independent of how any particular night goes. And it kind of helps me. I don't know if it's going to help you, but it might be worth kind of thinking about.
100%. And I think, Thea was kind of more looking for, actually, you and me, we naturally go into like maybe you should think about this, like problem solving.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mean
also,
to
like,
dictate or anything like
no, no,
that.
no, I'm thinking more like, I want to say to Thea, like, you've been heard by us and a lot of people please comment, by the way, anyone who feels the same as Thea, like, please comment so Thea knows that. But I want to add one more thing. I can't help it. I have to add one more thing, which is this one, which is, when someone says, I'm no longer anxious and I just don't sleep, that can go both ways. So sometimes it's like somebody's truly less anxious and it's just a matter of time until sleep will come, which is when people start learning and become like good. But sometimes I also can become worried when somebody's like, I'm not even anxious and I can't sleep, because then they can be going the direction of like, there's a real mystery here. Something is really weird. So I want to, tell anyone that it's not unusual at all to not feel any anxiety and still not sleep, because there's probably some sneaky hyperarousal there that you don't really recognize. And the brain, kind of in a weird way, always tries to keep you safe. And one way it keeps you safe is by telling you it's not even anxiety. There's something else. But in reality, it is always some anxiety there. So keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, thanks so much. And
thank you for your message. Definitely.
Okay. This is from Connie. So Connie sent us some emails via Facebook, actually. Let's take a look. These are actually kind of 3 messages that I just kind of put together. So let's read it. Connie says, I started sleep restriction Monday. I'm staying up till 12:30 a.m. and have my alarm set for 6:30. 6:30 is my normal wake up time. However, when I get in bed at 12:30 a.m., I'm still not sleeping, ! I'm back up out of bed until 2 a.m. So sleepy. And I think this is killing me. Tempted to take over the counter, but they don't work for me. Please hear your thoughts. And then is another one. If you notice, back last week I was sleeping and now nothing. I read before 12:30 a.m., so nothing stimulating. I did get anxious when I realized I was not going to sleep. I watched your video today, and it was so helpful in regard to the second attachment. Being on day 3 of the sleep restriction, fear set in and dread set in when it got time to sleep. I kept checking the clock. It was 12:30. I wanted to go to sleep. Then when it didn't happen, I was mad. Stayed up for a while, back in bed, no sleep, back up, finally sleep. Day 4, and I will try hard tonight to change my mindset when bedtime comes. Your videos are so informative. Thank you. I caved in last night up till 2, I'm guessing a.m. And then I realized if I don't sleep, I would only have 4 hours. I took half of a sleeping pill. I've actually enjoyed the extra time staying up. Interesting little twist there in the end.
Yeah, I know. That's right. It's like, oh, the butler did it.
All right.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, Connie, when I read this, I'm like, this is day 4. There's so much low-hanging fruit, I think, here from my perspective. But you go first. What do you think, Michael?
Well, one of my favorites, of course, don't monitor the time at night. I think it's just such an easy thing to not do, to avoid the time. Don't focus on the time. So starting around, I don't know, midnight or something, you're just done with time until your morning, consistent time comes. And if so what people do during the night is, they're constantly looking at the clock. Is it morning? Is it this time? Is it that time? Is it, is it 4:03 and then it's like 4:13 and then it's 4:17? These kinds of things. It just throws gasoline on the insomnia fire, if you want an analogy. It's just an easy thing to take out of the equation. The timeless night, we like to call it. So I'm just a big proponent. I've seen it help a lot of people. I want to quickly reiterate what Daniel just said. You're on day 4 or 5 or something at CBTi. So just hang in there. There's going to be some things to kind of sort out, and just be patient. And I think early in the first email, it was go to bed at 12:30 and then stay there until 2. Okay, that's an hour and a half in bed, most likely tossing and turning, being frustrated, anxious, talking to yourself. Why can't I sleep? What do I need to do? Should I take the pill? Should I not take the pill? Avoid that. Avoid all of that. So you're not in bed until you feel like you're losing focus. You kind of want to get to that point. Not just it's 12:30 and not just, well, I'm kind of tired or I'm bored. Those aren't reasons to go to bed. You want to ask, check in with yourself a little bit. If whatever you're doing, watching TV or reading or something, kind of check in. Like, am I starting to kind of lose a little focus here? If yes, calmly put yourself in bed, and then don't stay there for a long time if you're starting to get anxious and starting to get that, that alertness is really starting to build, and anxiety and all that. Don't be in bed. At least sit up in bed. Don't be flat with the lights off, quote unquote, trying to sleep. So that's some of the low-hanging fruit that I saw from the email. So Daniel, what else?
Yeah, very similar. I think to me, this message is very much an illustration of why text, like kind of like cut and dry textbook, like kind of like CBTi, often can be problematic. And by the way, no judgment here, because oftentimes when I see people in clinic, it's limited time. You have to tell something very concrete. And I often also tell people like, okay, don't go to bed before this time, get out of bed this time, and etc. But it's important to contextualize, and we have kind of the luxury here of just like sitting and talking, so we can do all the contextualization we want. But here's the thing: like when you tell somebody like be up till 12:30, get out of bed 6:30, and if you can't sleep, get out of bed. What often happens is exactly what we're reading from Connie, which is like, okay, now it's 9:30. All right, I have 3 more hours. Now it's 11:30. I feel kind of sleepy, but am I going to sleep? I know. Okay, 12:15, 12:15. Okay, now it's 12:15. Now I can sleep. The pressure that has been built up because like waiting for 12:30 keeps you from sleeping, and again keeps awareness of time. Very problematic. And then the other one where you're like probably told that if you can't sleep, immediately get out of bed. Like the jumping in and out of bed can be so problematic. And to spin off from what you said, Michael, is like if you wake up and you're awake, you don't have to automatically just jump out of bed. You can, like you always say, like you can see how you feel. If you feel good in bed, you can stay there. But what you definitely want to avoid is like being in bed trying to sleep. You never want that one. And one more thing I want to add was so yes, I think it always is good to like not know the time, just as Coach Michael says. And the final one here, like I caved in and and then I realized if I didn't sleep, I took half of a sleeping pill.
OTC.
And and a lot of people say that, oh my God, I didn't want to do that. I did it anyway. I feel so bad about myself. That's no problem. Really, I don't think there's a problem. You're looking back at that, like no judgment. It's kind of like somebody who wants to stop smoking. And if they go 5 weeks and then like, I had a cigarette now and that's over, I'm a smoker again, I'm going to start smoking. No, it's like you had one cigarette. Like but just like, no judgment. Like you're starting early, just like, keep going with the program, talk to us, talk to your coach, and I think you'll do fantastic.
Yeah, it's early. You're just you're finishing your first week.
Super early.
This is like a big change. So there's just go patiently. You're going to sleep every night of your life. There's no rush. There's no rush. There's no rush.
Oh man. Okay, let's do this one. Here's live from BFT. If you could control your thoughts at night by thinking positively, you would sleep. So is told. So now I feel a bit frustrated because sometimes it's so exhausting to fight these thoughts. Yeah, I think, okay, when I read this, I immediately think, if you could control your thoughts at night by thinking positively, you would sleep. True. If I could control my thoughts, I would control them, but not any human being can do that. That's literally impossible. In fact, the more you try to control them, the more kind of out of control they become. So I think there's a good intent there. Everybody says like think positive, that comes from a good place. But if you try to control your thoughts, they get out of control. So I think the good thing there is always like let go of control. If you try to like just observe your thoughts and like don't engage with them or distract yourself, much better.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent on the distraction thing and using your big human visual part of your brain. Go somewhere. When you're in bed, the last thing you should be mentally, the last place that you should be mentally is in bed. You should mentally be somewhere else and enjoy it. Tap into that. It's kind of like the first thing I always tell anyone, I just remind them of something. I remind them that they cannot force themselves to sleep. Nobody can. And the harder you, quote unquote, try, the more elusive sleep gets. That's the starting point I have with every single client I've ever worked with. So eventually the question becomes, well, how do you not try? You don't try by focusing on something else. And I encourage people to explore imagery. So memory, a movie, a book you're reading, anything that's like it's not, don't just focus on like one thing or one, like you're like sit at the IMAX movie. You're now at IMAX and you have the biggest, grandest thing playing in front of you. See it and really try to get detailed, because the harder you try to do that, the more effort you put into doing that, the less effort you can possibly put in to trying to sleep. So in my mind, that's the ultimate way of not trying to force sleep. And so I encourage anyone to kind of explore that. You know, people hear the word imagery and sometimes they get a little, oh, this is kind of hocus pocus, kind of out there stuff. It's not. You're a human being. You do it all the time. And, you know, all I'm saying is tap into it. In bed, awake, imagery. And if imagery is really hard to do, it's just not working out, you're anxious, you're thinking about it, you're tossing and turning, that's when consider getting out of bed. I mean, why would you want to stay there doing that? That's not enjoyable at all. Go do something you enjoy. That's my take.
Very good one. And, you know, I think I want to, you know, focus a little bit on the last part of this comment, which is it's so exhausting to fight these thoughts. Right there, we see why you have so many thoughts. I think it's actually so clear that, you know, I'm just going to very briefly do this one where, you know, the thoughts, the kind of anxiety thoughts, they are your brain's way of trying to warn you of something happening. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? It's like you're trying to warn a friend that's going to be hit by a car. Hey, watch out for the car. Watch out for the car. If that person is kind of like, doesn't hear you, they're going like, watch out for the car. And so when somebody's kind of ignoring you, you really feel the need to warn them. And so does your brain. So the more you try to fight the thoughts, the more your brain's going, you got to hear this. 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 So you can do like Coach Michael says, take your thoughts elsewhere. Or if they become sticky, then start writing them down during the day. Do a daily thought download. Show the brain that you're listening. Whenever you fight thoughts, you're going to get a whole lot more of them. BFT, hope that helps. And ooh, I hit the wrong button there. I was going to go to our next question. Let's see here. I think there was one more. Yeah, this is, I think, this is the last one. Let's go over this one. Mm-hmm. This is from Joe. Came in via Instagram, add to stream. Okay, Joe says, hi, Dan. I believe I had 10 years of chronic insomnia habit from my days playing computer games. I dread going to sleep in my own bed. It has caused a lot of issues through the years, depression, anxiety, insomnia. However, I can sleep pretty well around my granddad's house. So to me, I have conditioned my bedroom to be frustrated, etc. How can I correct this? Thanks. That was the first one. And then it was kind of a little bit more here. I said I would just reply on the channel. Then he said, sorry, I never replied, no problem. I'm adamant I have psychophysiological insomnia from a stress trigger and unhealthy lifestyle around 10 years ago. I'm currently doing my own CBTi, stimulus control, had zero sleep the other night, was too awake and alert, and slept 6.5 hours, but broken last night. I dreamt as well, which is a bonus. When I slept around my grandparents, it was a night and day difference. Frequent REM sleep, must have been dreaming 4 or 5 different dreams. I remember a few of them. And a big one for me personally is health. Insomnia has temporarily messed up health, but I was seeing signs of life sleeping at my granddad's. This is insane. I've had this for years at least. In fact, had it so bad, I'm sure it made my anxiety even worse and contributed to depression and anhedonia. I think the stress insomnia was a chicken and the egg with general anxiety and anhedonia. So I think, I think the question was really here in the beginning, which was like, okay, had trouble sleeping for a long time, but Joe sleeps pretty well over at his grandparents' place. So I'll let you go first. Thoughts on that, and how can Joe go to a place where he sleeps well, even at home?
Well, I didn't hear too many actual specifics about what those 10 years were like, but I'm going to just make a couple assumptions. Late into the night, maybe sugar to keep you kind of going, not really like taking care of yourself very well. I'm just going to kind of guess about that. But I don't know where he slept after he was done playing his games. I didn't pick up on that. So, I think probably after 10 years of doing something along those lines, it could play into it. I think it's more common to hear someone say that they sleep better somewhere other than their own bed than it is to hear someone say they sleep worse than they do in their own bed. Not to say that the bed is the thing, but it's the whole environment, the whole nighttime environment that you've become accustomed to. Maybe it is changed pretty significantly. So you're in the same like environment, but your routine is different, I guess what I'm saying. Whereas maybe at your grandparents' house, it's more relaxed. It's kind of like you don't have any responsibilities. It's not like you're on vacation, but it's kind of similar, like you can kind of just do like enjoyable things, have good conversations, and there's not a lot of details. When people are at home, there's all these details, that you gotta like, check, make sure everything's turned off, and you got this and that, make sure that's wrapped up and that's locked and everything. Whereas somewhere else, sometimes it's kind of like, you're not worried about anything. You're just kind of like, oh, it sounds like you have a good relationship with your grandparents, I think it was, which is fantastic, very healthy. And so maybe that's playing into it. Can you sleep better at home? Yeah, you can. It might take a little bit to kind of get there, change some thought patterns a little bit, and maybe even a little bit of a routine in the evening that is different than when you were doing gaming into the night. So those are just some observations.
Yeah, it's actually great. Like as you're sharing some thoughts here, I'm kind of like crystallizing my answers. I think that's really helpful. I want to just kind of say that almost the same thing you said, Mike, but in kind of a different way, which is, yeah, it's super common that somebody says, I sleep better when I'm on vacation or this and that. And I think the key thing for me here is that you're in the same planet. I mean, it's not that you're in it's not the mattress that's different to your grandparents. It's not the air. It's just that your thought process is different. You're not thinking the same things that you're thinking at home. And how can you change that? Well, I think there's not one single thing. It is everything we always talk about here. It is that when you're at home, don't go to bed super early to try to get more sleep. Spend a reasonable amount of time in bed, maybe like 7 hours or something like that, and also like befriend wakefulness. Always, 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 when you're up at night, try to do something joyous, etc. So I think, honestly, Joe, it's like if you just listen to this channel and you apply, you have something great, which is, you can't sleep. There's nothing wrong with your sleep system. It's just exactly that your own home environment has become associated with, fearfulness of being awake, etc. So that's great. Just learn general things and you can apply that at home. And before we take maybe a live question here, actually, I think Neil is kind of chiming in here. Let's see here. I think that during the day, it's very important to be engaged in what we do, and then thoughts won't be about sleep, and then sleep-related thoughts will be reduced even at night. 100%.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. 100%.
And so what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, just a comment here. Very interesting, I think, is that Joe describes that when he's at his grandparents' place, he sleeps well and he has a lot of dreams, at least 4 or 5 of them, a lot of dreams, right? And then you also hear so much people saying like, oh my gosh, I'm hardly sleeping at all. I have all these dreams. It's so interesting how dreams can, for some people, mean they have good sleep and some people poor sleep.
Yep, that's so true. That's so true. It's so variable, and that's kind of like the nature of like dream sleep, REM sleep, when most of the dreams occur. It's very paradoxical, and how someone feels waking up out of that state can be like polar opposites. Some people, like you said, they feel like, oh, I feel great, I was so refreshing, and some people feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't even barely sleep, I was dreaming, and and they're so you just get that. It's an unpredictable kind of feeling you get waking up out of that. So, people say like, our dreams, is it good if I remember my dreams? You probably get asked that question all the time. And I'm always like, well, I'm not a dream therapist here. So let's just start with that, but, and I think it's unpredictable. Some people remember them. I think there's a bit of the hyperarousal that plays into people waking up out of a dream and remembering it, feeling like it was like right there kind of thing. Whereas someone who's a little more, not so type A, maybe less prone to experiencing insomnia, maybe tends not to remember the dreams as much. Little side note about dreaming as well, and this goes back to my sleep tech days. I love to share stories about sleep tech days. One of the more common things you hear as a sleep tech from patients is they dream about having trouble breathing. People with sleep apnea, a lot of times, and I've heard other techs say this, and I think I've read about it, where, dreaming of like suffocation or underwater was, and and I heard this a lot when I was first in the sleep field in the 80s, when these sleep apnea was brand new, and we were studying people that were really, really severe. Now they catch it a lot earlier, thankfully. These really severe patients would talk about, like, oh, like you say, do you ever dream like you're drowning or something? And they look at you like, how do you know that? And I'm just like, well, it's like most of my patients kind of, if I ask them, they say that. So, dreams are just kind of odd like that. I don't have a lot else to say about that.
Yeah.
And they happen more towards morning. That's,
Absolutely. And before we take, I have a really nice live comment I'm going to share in a second here. It's just, I just want to say that I think, Joe, I think you understood the whole concept of psychophysiological insomnia very well, which, by the way, I stopped really talking about it because I think all insomnia really is from the same place. But yes, something happened a long time ago that maybe messed up your sleep and your sleep schedule, etc. But that's not the reason you have trouble sleeping now. It is because the way your relationship between with sleep and wakefulness has changed, which also means that it's not like, oh, I did something 10 years ago and now I'm going to be doomed for the rest of my life. Not at all. Just learn here, apply what you hear here, and you'll do really well, Joe. And then Michael Green, who's one of the first people who ever really followed this channel, says, I'm starting to sleep better because I've learned to embrace wakefulness. There you have it.
Fantastic. That's such a big thing. That absolutely is.
I want to say three quick things about this. One is, always happy when somebody's sleeping better. That's just fantastic to hear. Number two, when somebody affirms that they're sleeping better by leaving a comment, for example, that extra tailwind, right? The affirmation, super great.
Tailwind.
Number three, attributing good sleep to changing your thoughts and your relationship. It can't get any better because now that's it. You have changed your relationship to sleep, to wakefulness, actually. You're sleeping better. Perfect. Love it.
Yep. Clouds are parting, sun's coming out. Michael, you're there. You've arrived. That's so great to hear. I just love hearing things like that. Someone who struggled and they just get it. They just understand. That's kind of what it really boils down to is learning not to be fearful of being awake at night.
I struggled with sleep for 2 years, and I feel like the info from Coach Daniel, Martin Reed, and of course you contributed a lot here, Michael, too, really start to stick, especially hyperarousal, just not caring about sleep. I now have to comment on that one too, which is like when somebody says, I don't care so much about sleep anymore, I know that they are in a good place. But for somebody that hears that, has a lot of trouble sleeping, they'll go like, what do you mean I don't care? How can I not do that? And I always try to contextualize it now by saying it's not really that you don't care, it's that you're not so attached, or like you say, Michael, indifferent. If I sleep good, if I sleep a lot, okay. If I don't sleep so much, both are okay. When you're unattached or when you're not attached to the outcome, natto.
Yep.
Things come your way.
Yeah, it's like, and Michael, really quick there. Michael, sounds like you started probably not thinking about sleep, and then sleep got elusive for whatever reasons, and then you started focusing on it, trying to control it, all this kind of stuff, and now you're back where you started, where you're indifferent about your sleep.
You're indifferent, 100%. And credit goes a lot of it to our friend. I'm on the 4th week of Martin Reed's program. Thank you, Michael and Daniel, as well. Wonderful to hear. And
found a great coach
to end this episode.
That's awesome. Great to hear.
All right. Thanks, everyone out there, and we'll be back next Friday.
Thanks, everybody. Great emails. Thank you.